Someone's got it in for me. The planting star is in the press. Whoever it is, I wish they'd cut it out. But when they will, I can only guess. They say I shot a man named Gray and took his wife to Italy. She inherited $1 million, and when she died, it came to me. I can't help it if I'm lucky. People see me all the time, and they just can't remember how to act. Their minds are filled with big ideas, images, and distorted facts. And even you yesterday, you had to ask me where it was at. I couldn't believe after all these years you didn't know me any better than that, sweet lady. Idiot wind, blowing every time you move your mouth, going down the back roads heading south. Idiot wind, blowing every time you move your teeth. You an idiot, babe. It's a wonder that you still know how to breathe. I threw the I Ching yesterday. Said there might be some thunder at the well. Peace and quiet's been avoiding me. For so long it seems like living hell. There's a lone soldier on the hill watching falling raindrops pour. You'd never know it to look at him, but at the final shot he'd won the war after losing every battle. I woke up on the roadside, daydreaming about the way things sometimes are. Hoofbeats pounding in my head at breakneck speed and making me see stars. You hurt the ones that I love best, cover up the truth with lies. One day you'll be in the ditch, flies buzzing around your eyes, blood on your saddle. Idiot wind, blowing through the flowers on your tomb, blowing through the curtains in your room. Idiot wind, blowing.
Have any impact on the human body, they are illegal. That's just the vitamin and mineral guideline. Let's talk about milk. We have recombinant bovine growth hormone, and now we can choose milk with it or milk without it, butter with it, butter without it, right? Not under Codex, because under Codex, every dairy cow on the planet must be treated with Monsanto's recombinant bovine growth hormone. Furthermore, under Codex, every animal used for food on the planet, whether it has fins, feet, or feathers, every animal on the planet must be treated with subclinical antibiotics. Must be treated with subclinical antibiotics and must be treated with exogenous growth hormones. Codex requires, mandates that all food be irradiated unless it's eaten locally and raw. All food, including organic food, of course. So is it organic afterwards? Well, of course, the organic standards are incredibly low. The organic standards allow a farmer to use veterinary drugs, including growth hormones, antibiotics, etc., on animals, and then at his whim reclassify them as organic, but farmers are our friends and they would never do that, right? Right. Codex sets limits for the dangerous industrial chemicals that you can have in your food. and the limits are incredibly high. Go to Codex Alimentarius, do a Google search, and look, there are drop-down menus at the top of the official Codex page. Look at the toxins and the veterinary chemicals and the levels that are set. They are terrifying to me, terrifying. The names of the chemicals that are permitted and the amounts of the chemicals that are permitted are terrifying to me. Why am I terrified? Well, perhaps I'm just a cowardly person. It's possible.
This is part 2 of my interview with Jim Mars. Now, I wanted to talk to you about a lot of people are concerned with this disclosure project, and they're wondering what's going on. And I feel
could you be loved and be loved? Could you be loved? Oh, now and be loved. Don't let them fool ya. Or even try to school ya. Oh no. Ooh. We've got the mind of our own, so go to hell if what you're thinking is not right. Love will never leave us alone. In the darkness there must come out a light. Could you be loved and be loved?
Dutch shell is part of the Queen's fortune. Of course, the Rockefellers have always had heavy oil interests. That was the original source of their old money from the old man.
My name is Daniel Esterlin, and I've been doing this for the last 15 years. I'm from Canada. I'm very proud of my country because, as you can see, there are a lot of people covering the Bilderberg conference. Last year, it took me 14.5 hours to get to Munich. I was pulled off a plane in Milan. I was pulled off a plane in Munich. They interrogated me 4 hours in both places. Full hotel, but we were staying at Jim and I. Out of the 20 rooms, 6 were occupied, 3 by the CIA and 3 by the German Secret Service. That's how serious these people are, and that's how afraid they are of actually what we may be able to reveal and what we actually do reveal. Occupied 3 by the CIA and 3 by the German Secret Service. That's how serious these people are, and that's how afraid they are of actually what we may be able to reveal and what we actually do reveal publicly about the Bilderberger intents.
Daniel Esterlin has covered the Bilderberg meetings in Europe and North America for more than 15 years. His book, Club Bilderberg.
One in 7 prescriptions in France, for instance, includes a psychotropic drug, and more than 50% of the unemployed, almost 2 million people, take psychotropic drugs. Combined spending on antipsychotic drugs and antidepressants jumped from around $500 million in 1986 to nearly $20 billion in 2004. The scope is huge. Driven by DSM. A DSM is the diagnostic manual for psychiatrists, started off with just a few dozen, and now there are hundreds and hundreds of diagnoses of these mental illnesses. So, driven by DSM-derived mental illness statistics, the international mental health budget has skyrocketed over the past 10 years. So, in 1994, in the US, the mental health budget was $33 billion. In 1994, more than $80 billion today. Switzerland's spending on mental health has increased from a little over $70 million in 1988 to $184 million over a 10-year period. And these are all adjusted for inflation. Germany, let's look at the growth of these medications. So, if you have a medication that claims to cure malaria, and you have a population which is significantly infected by malaria, and you have a cure, that's one of the ways you know in which a medication is efficacious. You have a disease and you have a cure. As you apply the cure, the disease incidence should, which is significantly infected by malaria, and you have a cure, then as you apply the cure, you should expect the cases of malaria to go down. That's one of the ways you know in which a medication is efficacious. You have a disease and you have a cure. As you apply the cure, the disease incidence should shrink, should diminish. So it should have declined. The per capita incidence of mental illness should have declined over the past 50 years since the introduction of the first mental health meds. So let's look. In 1955, there were 355,000 adults in state and county mental hospitals with a psychiatric diagnosis. During the next 3 decades, which was the era of the first generation of psychiatric drugs, the number of disabled mentally ill rose from 355,000 to 1.25 million.
Relations with a foreign power.
Prozac arrived on the market in 1988, and during the next 20 years, the number of disabled mentally ill grew to more than 4 million adults in 2007. The prescribing of psychiatric medications to children and adolescents just exploded during this period, 1987 to 2007. And as this medical practice took hold, the number of youth in America receiving a government disability check because of a mental illness leapt from 16,200 in 1987 to 561,569 in 2007. A 35-fold increase. So look at the number of disabled mentally ill, 50 Americans is disabled by mental illness.
In the earlier years, and he got up and he said, "This is easy." He said that I'm completely convinced that the best minds in the human family have all come to realize that our human family is right on the brink of taking our next biological step in evolution, and that this faculty that is evolving in our human family is going to distinguish us from Homo sapien as much as Homo sapien was distinct from Homo erectus. Said, and that this faculty that is evolving is a faculty that is like sight and like hearing. It's a faculty by means of which we can have direct, immediate, experiential access. That the best minds in the human family, to the unitive phenomena, all come to realize that our human family is right on the brink of taking our next biological step in evolution.
Florence Mansman. This man was present when a special photographic array photographed a testing of an intercontinental ballistic missile, and as it reached subspace, this missile was intercepted by one of these extraterrestrial vehicles and was rendered inert. This was on film. The film was confiscated. They were told to be quiet about it, and the specific frames dealing with the UFO encounter with this missile were cut out by intelligence officers and were never seen again. Again, this witness, who has tremendous credibility, has corroboration from a now deceased senior military officer and subsequently a professor at Stanford University, Florence Mansman.
And we were looking down south, southwest, and the missile popped up through the fog. It was just beautiful. And I hollered, "There it is." And our guys on our M45 tracking mount with 180-inch lenses on it got it. And the big BU telescope swung over and got it. And we followed the thing, and sure enough, we could see all 3 stages of powered flight as they burned out and dropped away. And then, of course, to our naked eye, all we saw was a smoke trail going off into subspace as it headed off toward its target, which was Eniwetok Island, Eniwetok Atoll. So we whooped and shouted and heard the film wrap off in the BU telescope, and figured, well, that was our first big deal, and we got it. We sent the film back down to Vandenberg, and I don't know exactly how long it was after the event. It might have been a day or two. I was called into Major Mansman's office at the 1st Strategic Aerospace Division headquarters. And I walked into his office, and they had a screen and a 16mm projector set up. There was a couch, and Major Mansman said, "Sit down," and there were two guys, as I recall, two guys in gray suits, civilian clothes, which was fairly unusual. And Major Mansman said, "Watch this," and turned on the film projector. And I watched the screen, and there was the launch from the day or two before at Big Sur. It was quite exciting, because of the length of the telescope. As the Atlas missile entered the frame, we could see the whole third stage, which has two rocket nozzles like this and one in the center, a gimbaled one in the center, fill in our frame from about 160 miles. That was pretty exciting optics. We watched that stage burn out, we watched the second stage burn out, we watched the third stage burn out, and into the frame came something else. It flew into the frame like this, and it shot a beam of light at the warhead, which is represented by my thumb here. Now, remember, all this stuff is flying at several thousand miles an hour. So this thing fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it, and then this thing flies up like this. Meanwhile, we're all going like this, fires another beam of light, goes around like this, we're going like this, fires another beam of light, goes down like this, fires another beam of light, and then flies out the way it came in. And the warhead tumbles out of space. The object, the points of light that we saw, the warhead and so forth, were traveling through subspace about 60 miles straight up. And they were going somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 to 14,000 miles an hour when this thing caught up to them, flew in, flew around them, went like this, and flew back out. Everything was going to about between 11 and 14,000 miles an hour that way. Now when the lights came on, Major Mansman turned around and looked at me and said, "Were you guys screwing around up there?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "What was that?" And I said, "It looks to me like we got a UFO." Major Mansman, who's a very good reader of film, said that the feeling at the time was that it must have been extraterrestrial. That they assumed that the beam of light that struck the warhead, the dummy warhead, was some sort of plasma beam, because it looked like a plasma beam. He said what happened is this. They took the film and they spooled off the part that had the UFO on it, and they took a pair of scissors and cut it off. They put that on a separate reel, they put it in their briefcase, they handed Major Mansman back the rest of the film and said, "Here, I don't need to remind you, Major Mansman, of the severity of a security breach. We'll consider this incident closed."
Colonel Ross Diedrichson had an illustrious career with the Air Force, which was followed by many years of service.
They're taking entirely different species and mixing them all up. And it's almost enough to make you think that movie, The Fly, may be becoming true at some point. But almost everything we have has GMO in it. Dr. Stephanie Sunoff, senior MIT research scientist, says at today's rate, she has found a remarkably consistent correlation between the use of Roundup, which is Monsanto's key herbicide, on corn, soy, corn, and wheat, and connected to the rising rates of autism. In fact, she warns that, in my view, by today's rate, by 2025, 1 in 2 children will be autistic. 1 in 2. She said, this situation is almost beyond repair. We need to do something drastic. And of course, you're not going to hear much from her. Why? Because she's not going to be all over the media. Because the media counts on Monsanto for a big chunk of their profits. By the way, yeah, last Saturday, there was
why we made the choice, because we're starting to connect to that level that made the choice. And I would say we're here to help to break the spell. And on another level, we're here to experience this extraordinary time of epoch change. To break the spell of programmed humanity and change the nature of the experience here in what we call Earth. And we're here to do it. I don't care if you sweep the streets or you work for the government. We're all here at this time because we chose to be here. And in this period coming up, as the control system throws its last desperate effort to hold on to its power, it will seem for a few years that it's actually getting more control, but it's the death throes. It will be a mistaken view that it's getting more power. It just appears to be. It's desperately trying to hold on to a control that is in the process of being removed. And in this period, we're going to face everything you can think of, everything they can think of to destabilize us emotionally and in all the other ways, whether it's vaccines, economic crashes, conflicts, whatever. And if we fall in this period into mind perception and five sense perception, it's going to be a very challenging time in this next little period as we go through consciousness having an experience. Then going through these challenges is going to be far easier. There's a great line of freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. So many people are not free because they have something to lose, or they think they have. They have a big house, they have money or power or prestige, and that because they fear losing that, they don't have the freedom to be themselves because they're fearful that they will lose it if they upset certain people by expressing what they really think, as opposed to being a clone of the people they're frightened of upsetting. And there's this proverb that says, just when the caterpillar thought life was over, it became a butterfly. And that's where we are in humanity now. We're breaking out of the caterpillar period, and we are starting to fly symbolically as we expand our awareness to realize who we really are. And I would emphasize this. It's not that this control system and this reptilian element or any of it is all powerful or omnipotent. They're not. Anything that wants power over and is in the fear that this control system mechanism is in, desperate not to be uncovered because of the consequences, then you are in a low vibrational state. You have a limitation of how far you can get out and connect.
But they're being destroyed from within.
Last year saw more Army suicides than any year on record.
Day
Our son was just one of thousands of veterans that this country has lost to suicide.
after day
Only to die here at home in their sleep.
after day.